Japan and China are once again locked in a war of words, but this time the disagreement goes far beyond diplomacy. It touches on military power, regional security, historical memory, and the future balance of power in Asia. At the center of the latest dispute is China's accusation that Japan is embracing what Beijing calls new militarism, a charge that Tokyo has firmly rejected. The exchange took place during a major international security gathering attended by defense officials, military leaders, and policymakers from around the world. What began as a discussion about regional security quickly turned into a sharp confrontation over Japan's growing defense capabilities and China's expanding military power. For years, China has criticized Japan's efforts to strengthen its military. Beijing argues that Tokyo's increasing defense budget, expanding military partnerships, and modernization programs are signs that Japan is moving away from the pacifist principles that guided the country after World War II. Chinese officials frequently point to history and warn against what they describe as the re-emergence of militaristic thinking. Japan strongly disagrees with that characterization. Japanese Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi responded directly to the accusations and questioned the logic behind China's claims. Speaking before an international audience, he highlighted the contrast between China's military capabilities and Japan's own military posture. Shinjiro Koizumi said, "Think about it. There is a country that has a huge arsenal of nuclear weapons and strategic bombers. Japan has neither of such weapons, and yet Japan is labeled new militarism. Isn't it strange?" The statement immediately attracted attention because it reflected Tokyo's growing frustration with Beijing's criticism. Japanese officials argue that their country remains committed to a defensive military strategy and that its security policies are responses to a rapidly changing regional environment. Japan's leaders say the security landscape in Asia today is very different from what it was even a decade ago. Across the region, military spending is increasing, strategic competition is intensifying, and territorial disputes remain unresolved. Tokyo believes it must adapt to these changes if it wants to protect its national interests and ensure the safety of its people. One of the biggest factors driving Japan's security concerns is China's military expansion. Over the past 2 decades, China has transformed its armed forces at an extraordinary pace. It now possesses one of the largest naval fleets in the world. Its missile capabilities have expanded dramatically. Its air force has introduced increasingly advanced aircraft. Beijing has also invested heavily in cyber warfare, space technologies, and long-range strike systems. These developments have attracted attention throughout Asia. Japan views many of these changes with concern. Officials in Tokyo argue that China's growing military power, combined with increasingly frequent military activities near disputed areas, has altered the security balance in the region. From Japan's perspective, strengthening its defense capabilities is not about reviving militarism. Instead, Japanese leaders say it is about ensuring deterrence and maintaining stability in an increasingly uncertain environment. This argument forms the foundation of Japan's current defense strategy. In recent years, Japan has launched what many analysts describe as the most significant military modernization effort. Since the end of World War II, defense spending has risen substantially. Investments in missile defense systems have increased, new technologies are being developed, cyber defense programs are expanding, military readiness has become a higher priority than at any time in recent decades. China sees these developments differently. China's officials argue that Japan is using regional tensions as justification for military expansion. Beijing claims that Tokyo is gradually abandoning the restraints that defined its post-war security policies. Chinese representatives at international forums frequently raise concerns about Japan's defense posture and argue that memories of the past should not be forgotten. For China, history remains an important part of the discussion. The wounds left by the Second World War continue to influence how Beijing views Japan's military activities. Chinese leaders often stress the importance of historical responsibility and caution against policies they believe could destabilize the region. Japan acknowledges the importance of history, but rejects comparisons between modern Japan and the country that existed before 1945. Japanese officials argue that today's Japan should be judged based on its actions over the past 8 decades, rather than events that occurred generations ago. Koizumi emphasized that point during his remarks. Shinjiro Koizumi said, "Japan's record since World War II speaks for itself." For Tokyo, that record includes decades of economic development, diplomatic engagement, international cooperation, and support for rules-based international order. Japan points out that it has consistently promoted peace, contributed to humanitarian efforts, supported development projects across Asia, and maintained a defense posture focused primarily on self-defense. Yet despite those arguments, tensions between China and Japan continue to grow. One of the most important reasons is Taiwan. The Taiwan issue has become one of the most sensitive and potentially dangerous flashpoints in East Asia. China considers Taiwan part of its territory and has repeatedly stated that reunification remains a national objective. At the same time, military activities around Taiwan have increased significantly in recent years. Large-scale military exercises, naval deployments, and air operations have become more frequent, raising concerns among neighboring countries. Japan closely monitors these developments because of Taiwan's geographic proximity to Japanese territory. Any military conflict involving Taiwan would have immediate consequences for Japan's security, economy, and regional stability. Japanese officials have repeatedly emphasized the importance of maintaining peace across the Taiwan Strait and preventing escalation. China, however, views outside involvement in Taiwan-related issues with suspicion. Beijing frequently criticizes foreign governments that comment on Taiwan and warns against actions it considers interference in its internal affairs. As a result, Taiwan has become one of the most significant sources of friction between Beijing and Tokyo. The tensions are not limited to Taiwan alone. Disputes in nearby waters continue to contribute to the broader rivalry. The East China Sea remains an area of concern, with competing territorial claims and increasing maritime activity. The South China Sea also plays an important role in regional security discussions because of its strategic importance to global trade and navigation. Japan consistently supports freedom of navigation and adherence to international law. Tokyo argues that open and secure sea lanes are essential for economic prosperity and regional stability. China maintains its own position regarding maritime rights and territorial claims, creating another area where the two countries often disagree. At the same time, Japan has been expanding its security partnerships across the Indo-Pacific. Tokyo has strengthened defense cooperation with several countries that share concerns about regional stability. Joint military exercises, intelligence sharing arrangements, and maritime cooperation programs have become increasingly common. One of the most significant examples is the growing relationship between Japan and the Philippines. Over the past few years, the two countries have expanded defense cooperation considerably. Joint exercises have increased. Maritime security cooperation has deepened. High-level defense dialogues have become more frequent. Both nations share concerns about regional security challenges and support maintaining a stable and rules-based maritime environment. The strengthening of Japan-Philippines relations has attracted attention across the region. China often views expanding security partnerships with caution, arguing that military groupings and strategic alignments could increase tensions rather than reduce them. Japan rejects those concerns. Japanese officials insist that their partnerships are transparent, defensive, and focused on preserving peace and stability. Beyond military issues, however, there is another important reality that shapes relations between China and Japan. Despite political disagreements and security tensions, the two countries remain deeply connected economically. China is one of Japan's largest trading partners. Businesses in both countries rely on integrated supply chains. Investment flows continue in both directions. Millions of jobs depend on economic cooperation. This economic interdependence creates strong incentives for both governments to avoid direct confrontation. Even during periods of heightened tension, leaders on both sides recognize the importance of maintaining communication. Diplomatic channels remain open. Economic cooperation continues. Meetings between officials still take place despite disagreements over security issues. This combination of competition and cooperation defines the modern relationship between China and Japan. Neither country wants conflict. Both governments understand the enormous economic and political costs that would result from serious confrontation. Yet, at the same time, neither side appears willing to compromise on issues it considers vital to national security. As a result, tensions continue to rise even while dialogue continues. The latest dispute over accusations of new militarism highlights this complex reality. For China, Japan's military modernization raises questions about the future direction of Japanese security policy. For Japan, those same policies are viewed as necessary responses to an increasingly challenging strategic environment. Both countries believe they are acting in defense of their national interests. Both countries believe their concerns are justified. And both countries are seeking to shape the future of Asia according to their own vision. Across the Indo-Pacific, governments are watching these developments closely. Many countries maintain strong economic relationships with China while also expanding security cooperation with Japan and other partners. They benefit from regional stability and have little interest in being forced to choose sides. Yet as competition between major powers intensifies, balancing those relationships is becoming increasingly difficult. The coming years are likely to be critical. Military modernization is expected to continue throughout the region. Strategic competition will remain intense. Questions ensue. Rounding Taiwan, maritime disputes, and regional security are unlikely to disappear anytime soon. The relationship between Japan and China will therefore remain one of the most important factors influencing the future of the Indo-Pacific. Whether the two nations can successfully manage their differences while avoiding confrontation will have consequences far beyond their own borders. For now, the debate over new militarism is more than just a diplomatic disagreement. It is a reflection of a changing Asia, a shifting balance of power, and an increasingly complex security environment that will shape regional politics for years to come. As both countries continue to strengthen their positions, the world will be watching closely to see whether competition can be managed peacefully or whether tensions will continue to escalate in the years ahead.